Ard Financial Group comprises banking and insurance and investment banking divisions, which themselves have different retail institutions in them. And then we own a big chunk of Mongolian Post, and we own a payments platform, which is called Most FinTech. And that together comprises about 50 different companies altogether, 12 of which are public. And the mission of our group is to create the investor nation. So we want Mongolia to become the first investor nation. And we want to earn that. Currently, we have 110,000 shareholders. We want to bring in now people to help us expand in the region and then globally through our mining, energy, and smart city ambitions. Energy currently is the most essential ingredient for data centers. We want to use our abundant energy sources to power AI data centers.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of On Call with Insignia, where we go on call with leaders innovating the future of emerging markets globally. We've had the pleasure of interviewing many people outside of Southeast Asia. Normally, we have guests from the region, but we've had folks come in, dial in from Latin America, from the US, from India as well. And now we have somebody really, I would say, like the go-to person on anything financial institutions, financial services in Mongolia. He's the guy. I have none other than Mr. Gan with me. I don't want to butcher his full name, so I'll let him share his full name. But yeah, I call him Mr. Gan, and I had the pleasure of being introduced to him by England. And I know I would love to know how you guys met actually, and maybe we can go from there. Yeah.
Yeah. My name, as you correctly noted, is not to be pronounced publicly very often. It goes Ganhuyag Chuluun Hutagt. Yeah. People know me as Gan. It's easier. And I went to Russian school when I was a kid, and the Russian teachers always would blush when they tried to call my name at the beginning of the class. I met Yinglan as a young global leader at the World Economic Forum. I'm a young global leader since 2009, and I believe England joined not too long thereafter, and we met at one of the World Economic Forum events, and I've run into him on many occasions as a very sharp, smart, hyperactive type of a person, as a very successful businessman, and I'm honored to be on the call with Insignia, a venture he has founded and is running very successfully.
Yeah, no, thanks for the kind words for our Insignia Ventures partners. But really, you're the star in this episode. I wanted to start off with anybody can look you up on Wikipedia, and you have a full career there. But would love to really hear some of your stories, right, on being on the ground. And I think this is the first time our audience really gets to learn about Mongolia as a market. And I think there's a lot that maybe even if they're not in the market or they're not in the ecosystem, they can probably learn from how you've built a lot of the, I would say, the fintech industry, blockchain industry in the country. And I think it would be interesting for more people to learn about Mongolia other than, I guess, the usual things that they see in mainstream media. So quite excited to have this conversation. So maybe we can start with your first job. It was 1991, as you mentioned off the record, and you were 18 and you were working at the Mongolian Stock Exchange. What got you into that particular role, and how did you make your way from that to eventually getting into microfinance? It seems like quite the quite the leap, right? To the first company you started and became CEO of.
Well, Mongolia was one of the more backward type of nations in the former Soviet bloc, former communist states. If one wants to now imagine what life was before 1990 in Mongolia, I think you should look at North Korea. That's how it was for us.
Wow.
There were 2 million Mongols in a country of 1.5 million square kilometers, which is 19th largest landmass in the world, and the most sparsely populated country in the world. In fact, that's like less than 2 people per square kilometer. Today, we have 3.5 million people, just for the background. And I just graduated from my secondary school, which was a special school with Russian teachers and Mongolian kids, and one of the very few here in Mongolia. And I said to my mom that I didn't want to go to university like everybody else in my class. And I said, I don't want to. I've had my tuition done and I was ready for life. And she set me up into a Mongolian Stock Exchange, which was just created to privatize state-owned enterprises that were left from the socialist times. And there I was, 18 years old at the stock exchange. People really didn't know probably what to do with me. So they put me very soon as a assistant and interpreter for the Canadian advisor to the stock exchange. So imagine from one day being in a centrally planned communist country as a secondary school student and wake up an employee of the pinnacle of capitalism, which was a stock
Right.
market. So
Yeah.
I spent 1 year there and then get pretty bored pretty fast. And after 1 year, I just told my mother and my dad that I wanted to do whatever they were doing. And they were trading goods between China and Russia. So
Mm.
I did that and went into a university in Hungary
Oh.
in 1993. Yeah, that's how I started my career. And that's how I got set into this lifestyle.
No, quite interesting. I love that comparison of almost night and day from what you were doing in secondary school all the way to your first job in the stock exchange.
They paid me twice the salary of my parents. So both,
Wow.
both the salaries of my dad and my mom, I started earning from day one.
Yeah, so there must be a really like huge generation kind of
Yeah.
difference with your generation and your parents' generation in terms of
Mm.
the economic kind of prosperity and also the aspirations that perhaps that you guys have. And I guess those aspirations included maybe starting your own company, right?
After I finished my school in Hungary, I came back to Mongolia. I paid through my tuition. My father died in 1993. And so we went through hardships. My mother had to cover for my tuition fee. I was probably one of the first Mongols to actually pay and graduate on my own without government subsidies and stipends. I came back and tried to do some business, didn't work. Then I got invited to work for the Central Bank of Mongolia, 1997. And in 1997, when I was in the central bank, I started pitching people, as you correctly guessed, to help me set up my own business. And I pitched nonstop. And in 1997, I started with my cousins, the country's first savings and loan cooperative, worked while inside the central bank, worked with the
Mm.
central bank colleagues to create a regulatory pilot basis type of regime and got licensed. And that cooperative credit union is still up
Running. Yeah.
and doing pretty well up to this moment. And while at the central bank, I ran into an ad which said that they were looking for a CEO of a microfinance project led by UN, funded by UN. So I applied. I got picked and they said, "You're too young to lead anything in this life. Why don't you become a finance manager?" Which I agreed. But after 1 year, they made me a CEO and I founded the country's first non-bank finance company, which was called Golden Fund for Development, which I transformed into a commercial bank through a series of mergers and acquisitions in 2001. So I was 28 when I got my bank license. And today that bank has 10% of the market share, is a systemic bank. It's the fourth largest bank in Mongolia called XacBank.
What kept you going through all of that? It seemed like a very short period of time to go from 1997 joining the central bank and then 1999 starting this microfinance company and then eventually doing all these mergers and acquisitions. What was driving you and what kept you going through all of that?
Well, I don't know an exact answer to that question, but as you are asking, I thought maybe the level of curiosity that I possess inside me is higher than average. And maybe I try out new things and I get bored with routine tasks very easily. And so I'd like to always create new adventures for me. And sometimes I get hurt, but that doesn't stop me from trying again. And that's what I did. And by 2004, I was lecturing around the world on transformations, change management. The Frankfurt School of Banking and Finance was inviting me. I was doing consulting jobs. 2005, they named me as the Year of Microcredit UN ambassador for Mongolia. Presidents visited my offices and prime ministers, the World Bank chiefs and IMF chiefs. EBRD was the first equity investor in Mongolia in
Right.
XacBank. IFC was their first equity investment in the country was also us. And I brought tons of international funds and banks through XacBank. And in 2007, I went beyond Mongolian borders and invested into Kyrgyzstan. So that was a
Mm.
historic moment. And in
Was that the
2000,
first kind of like cross-border
yeah,
investment within
yeah.
the
So
Central
we were
Asia
the,
region?
I mean,
Yeah.
nobody knew Mongolia at that time, and all of a
Right.
sudden we showed up on the horizon and invested into Kyrgyzstan banking sector. And then in 2010, I was able to secure investment into China. So we were the
Mm.
first international bank holding company which invested into China, and we had 51% of a joint venture there in Xinjiang.
Mm.
No, so these
Right.
were the historic milestones in my career, and then in 2008, I think World Bank gave us a $1 million award for coming up with a way to do smartphone,
Right.
not even smartphone, SMS
SMS. Okay.
message banking. So you would
Right.
basically have a number and then text an amount, and that amount would be paid to the account that you noted there. So these were the type of things that I did with my team in the past before they dragged me into politics. And I became a vice minister of finance in Mongolia in 2000.
Right. Yeah. No. And you just brought up a kind of your government stint, but I wanted to ask because you were building a lot of these, I would say, infrastructure and making all these milestones in terms of investment, cross-border investment, and obviously, I guess with Mongolia coming out of that period in the 90s, like how did you navigate the regulations or lack thereof, and trying to what did it make the job easier for you to like experiment and do new things, or yeah, were there any particular challenges?
Well, I was young, and probably people didn't take me too seriously, and that's why
Mm.
they allowed me to create first savings loan cooperative, non-bank finance company, and then give me a bank license and let me have a bank holding company, first leasing company, first mortgage securitization company, etc. And I was lucky in a sense, but also at the same time, I would bounce back. Yeah, I would never give up. So people push me away, I would bounce back and come back stronger. So I would
Mm.
never give up. And in 2012, I lost in the elections, and that's when I went back home. I reflected on my life and what I wanted to do in the future. I was only 37, and
Mm.
I said, okay, why? Okay, maybe I should just finish what I started in the private sector. And that's why I started this group, which I'm currently involved in. And that's
Right.
called ARD. Yeah, ARD
Art. Yeah.
stands for people. And I said, I want to work for my people. I do not want to work anymore for institutions, any type of institutions, not political parties, not international financial institutions, not private equities, no institutions, no banks. Yeah. So I said, I will work only for the people, including myself, including my family. I will only work for the people who I like. Yeah.
Mm.
And I will not waste any more time on faceless institutions. And that's why I created Ard. Ard today is one of the larger conglomerates in Mongolia. And we own Ard Financial Group, which is a holding company for our financial intermediaries. And then we have AI Group, which has been just split from Ard Financial Group. And that includes a media group, a software development group, crypto and blockchain group. And then we have now projects in mining, energy, and I just came from a meeting with the city municipal government leaders, and we will be entering into smart cities development in Mongolia. Ard Financial Group comprises banking and insurance and investment banking divisions, which themselves have different retail institutions in them. And then we own a big chunk of Mongolian Post, and we own a payments platform, which is called Most FinTech. And that together comprises about 50 different companies altogether, 12 of which are public. And the mission of our group is to create the investor nation. So we want Mongolia to become the first investor nation.
Mm.
And we want to earn that. Currently, we have 110,000 shareholders. We want to bring in now people to help us expand in the region and then globally through our mining, energy, and smart city ambitions.
I love that concept of the investor nation. I think quite interesting. And I guess with any investment, even at Insignia Venture Partners, any investment firm, we have an investment thesis, right? And a way in which we view the world and that guides our investment direction. What is
Mm.
the investment thesis for Ard Financial Group? Like what principle or what future kind of guides the direction in which you guys are investing?
I built this unique infrastructure, which I would say cannot be replicated elsewhere. 46 different licenses, 12 public companies, which includes a payments platform and a postal platform. We own a stock exchange group, which has like a stock exchange and a crypto exchange under one roof, which is called X Group, Exchange Group. Yeah. All these little pieces we put together over the years, and I don't think it can be repeated anywhere. Even if you have unlimited amount of financial resources, you cannot build that type of structure. And we want to now grow meat on this architecture, on this platform in Mongolia. But at the same time, some of the stuff like the super app that we have, which is called Ard app, which incorporates all the services that of these companies and offers them to our clients into one app, which integrates all financial services into one. Plus, it integrates crypto, seamlessly integrates crypto into traditional financial services ecosystem. I think it's not done yet anywhere else. And we want to now take some of our solutions into the region to some banks. I just came back from Europe where I was showing our solution to banks. And so 2025 was the year when we started showing off the stuff that we did here in Mongolia. And everybody wants to get a piece of us, at this time. And this is something that we want to offer in the region and globally. At the same time, we are expanding into other industries, such as energy. So Mongolia needs to become energy independent. We want to use the Trump era to get financing to build more coal power plants. We want to tap into renewable energy sources so that we become energy independent. And then we want to export that energy. At the same time, energy currently is the most essential ingredient for data centers. We want to use our abundant energy sources to power AI data centers. And these are the projects that are highly lucrative. And we want to work with partners to explore the opportunities that Mongolia is currently offering to investors. Then there are immense mining resources. So everybody talks about critical minerals and nuclear fuel. We have all of them. Everybody talks about gas. Everybody talks about solar and wind. And when you look at the Mongolian plateau and 300 sunny days in a year and always windy. It's a home of wind. Then with the current storage technologies, we can now become the energy storage for the planet and then tap into nuclear energy. Last year, we signed a deal with the French Orano to produce uranium here in Mongolia. So these are the opportunities that are present here currently. And Mongolia, Ulaanbaatar is 1,200 meters above the sea level. That's where I'm sitting right now, gazing out the window. I'll show you afterwards how UB looks like. And we are bordering with Russia and China, both of which are second and third largest military powers. So you can say Mongolia is well guarded by these two for free. We are the most secure place on this planet. In order to hit us, you have to go through Russia or China. This is a new way of thinking that I'm advertising. And if we manage to attract foreign investment and become a financial center, free economic zone for the region, we can now become Switzerland of Asia. Plus, if you combine it with our energy ambitions, with our AI data center ambitions, and with our rare earths ambitions, then we become the wolf of economy of Asia, not the tiger, but the wolf of Asia,
I love how you brought it back to that concept that you yourself introduced all those years ago. But just to recap everything, you're definitely moving both in the software, kind of digital kind of space with that super app that you mentioned and crypto embedded into it, and then also into very much the infrastructure side of things with energy, what that means for data centers and AI. And I think really bringing the world to Mongolia, so to speak, right? I wanted to ask about what challenges, because it seems there's a lot of potential for Mongolia in many different areas, and it seems like it's a matter of bringing in the rest of the world to Mongolia. What challenges do you see in terms of doing that, and how are you navigating those particular challenges?
Well, I said about our advantages, and that was being secure with our two big neighbors. But then it also presents unique set of challenges, being squeezed between two large neighbors such as China and Russia. So that is a unique set of challenges that it also brings logistics, in terms of logistics, bringing goods, politics, to be friendly with both of them, and also to be friends with Europe, to be friends with Singapore, to be friends with America. Yeah, it's hard. Having said that, we have a free and democratic country. You can go on freedomhouse.org and look at the map. Yeah, freedomhouse.org, and then
Right.
you will find that is this a big green chunk of land between
Yeah.
our two
Two
neighbors
purple.
is yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
is us, is your
The wolf
friends.
economy. Right.
Yeah, and this is not my book, but this is one Swedish guy who wrote. His name is Johan Nylander, but he
Mm.
gives me credit, and it doesn't talk about my wolf vision, but he gives me credit here, and I'm eternally grateful to him for that. And I think because we're free and democratic, we can have access to our policymakers and influence policymaking and say we want to develop in this particular way. Today, there is this newspaper that is part of our media group. It's
Mm-hmm.
called Unread Today.
Unread
It's in
today. Yeah.
English. And there we talk about tokenization. And it's called the Ard's Treasury Chest. We call it digital chest. And it's on the front page. And you see the wolf there in the middle. Yeah. And we talked about tokenization. So we tokenized our shares 5 years ago. So the digital vault, the investor nation, the centerfold, yeah? And we're saying it's time to tokenize everything that we see. Anything can be tokenized. And we're saying, okay, please read this article and let us tokenize our shares so that we take our coal producing companies and list it on Binance to raise money, to provide liquidity, to become borderless, to become a financial center, the wolf economy. And then we published this book last week. It's 3.0,
Yeah.
the digital gold 3.0. This is the digital gold original, 2017. This is the digital gold which was
2.0.
published in
Yeah.
2021. Yeah. So we go out of our way to influence people's mindsets,
Yeah. A
influence
lot of thought
opinions,
leadership. Yeah.
and do lots of stuff. Yeah. We organized the 2017, we organized this Crypto Nation Forum, invited all policymakers, and it was hype to talk about Bitcoin because Bitcoin was going up, and then 2021 came. It was because it became not very nice to talk about crypto, but we stay our course because we have a belief system. We truly see the future, and the future says that financial intermediation, the way it was done up to now, is done. We believe in tokenizations. We believe in less financial intermediation. We believe in Bitcoin. We believe in digital currencies. We believe in borderless money. We don't believe in centralized monetary systems, etc. And of course, our central banks and the Ministry of Finance, we talk our way through, and over time, we know we will prevail, and Mongolia can become number one nation to say we have digital IDs to all our citizens. We tokenized and sold our shares on Binance. Yeah, we were the first country to privatize our assets on Binance. That's what we're doing.
It's quite interesting the vigor with which you speak of the direction in which Mongolia is heading. I wanted to go back to talking about the people in Mongolia, and you did mention earlier Ard stands for people as well. How would you describe the Mongolian demographic and how they use these technologies, how they view these technologies with respect to what you're building, right?
We have about a dozen banks, 3.5 million people. We have about 500 non-bank finance companies, I think 200 savings loan cooperatives. I'm very proud of all these numbers. All Mongolian citizens have not one, not two, not three, but 5 different bank accounts.
Wow.
We are overbanked. Thanks to
First time I've
our
heard that
efforts.
word.
Because
Yeah.
I think when I was starting, there was like 10,000 borrowers from banks, and now everybody is indebted to a bank, which is not good. So that means that we overdid our job, and now it's high time to disrupt banks, disrupt in a positive way. They need to change. They need to bring down their costs. AI brings us now potential to bring down the credit risks tremendously. We will be the first ones now to announce AI-based lending, yeah? AI credit scores. 8 million phone numbers, mobile phones, smartphones. 300,000 Ard coin holders.
Wow.
Yeah. About 1 million people have brokerage accounts. Yeah. Most fintech, which is our payments platform, has 1.9 million users. So imagine 3.5 million people,
Population,
half of which are kids, but we have 1.9 million accounts.
Yeah. You
Unique
mentioned half
account.
of which are kids, so it's pretty still a very young population and a lot of room. I think one thing we see, especially with financial services products, is there's a lot of longevity in these platforms that invest in like the youth's ability to save and invest. And I think Mongolia definitely has that potential as well. I wanted to also talk to you about risk, right? I'm not sure how much you can share in that regard, but I think like with any financial service company or fintech, I think how they manage risk is at the heart of what they do. And what for you is the biggest risk with this wave of tokenization that you're trying to lead in Mongolia and redefining what it means to be an investor nation?
Well, in 2021, we had, in the beginning of the year, we were the only project that was involved with crypto. By the end of 2021, there was 60 different projects, and they raised money unscrupulously. And so that was a big risk for the country as a whole. It was a market risk, and regulators didn't respond well, and we let our people lose money to scam, basically. It was a massive publicly advertised scam to which regulators and policymakers just close their eyes and close their ears. I think we should not let this repeat itself. Over indebtedness of the population is definitely a concern. Macroeconomic stability is definitely a concern. We need to make sure that the macro policies stay sound. We need to make sure that Mongolian currency, Tugrik, stays stable and maybe appreciates. I hope definitely with the current administration, if they go ahead with some of the initiatives that we are discussing, Mongolian Tugrik will be again, like in 2011, the strongest currency. And that will also result in influx of foreign direct investment, making Mongolia the hottest capital markets again, like 2011 and 2021. In 2011, I was in the Ministry of Finance. In 2021, Ard Financial Group and our subsidiaries comprised 80% of the total trading on the Mongolian Stock Exchange. So I hope to bring back those times, but now on a more sustainable basis. In 2011, Mongolian Tugrik was the strongest currency globally, and we produced 17.4% economic growth. And I hope we will be able to return double-digit economic growth, but on a more sustainable basis.
We've talked a lot about how Mongolia has to be the kind of investor nation. I would love to hear your view on what Mongolia's startup ecosystem is like. How would you describe the startups that are in the market and how entrepreneurship in particular, the future generations of Afghan, right, are looking to build their own companies? Like, how does it look like in Mongolia?
Very sporadic. There is not a big policy push by the government to support the startup entrepreneurs here in Mongolia. But given, I think it's in our DNA, yeah. I receive these young entrepreneurs who have the genius ideas and they need a systematic approach and support. We work with some venture capital funds that support startups. Last year, as I host Mongolia Economic Forum, we support the startup challenges as part of the Mongolia Economic Forum. Last week, we held our blockchain week, UB blockchain week, and we organized a hackathon with some cash prize amongst the students. And there is a UB Innovation Hub that was supported by the municipal government, which was shut down. There are private initiatives, business incubators that are run by large companies. We ourselves, I say, we are an idea that we just put together. We are big, but we're still a startup. So our mentality inside this company, our culture inside this company is one of a large startup because we put together some pretty impossible ideas into one house.
It's really inspiring to see that, as you mentioned, like it's in your DNA. So I'm sure even if there's still a little bit sporadic, as you mentioned, not as much of a huge push, but it's part of, I guess, the people's like identity. And I guess
it's the ice-breaking effort that is happening. Yeah, we are breaking the ice. We are breaking the ice for others to follow in different directions. And because art is in so many different industries, we're breaking ice in lots of directions in many industries. And I forgot to mention the Zanjan's government approved the regulation on virtual zones. And then the Financial Regulatory Committee has a sandbox regulation and a council on sandboxes. And the central bank has a innovation hub, which is also a sandbox for innovation in the financial industry. Yeah.
So there's a lot of these sandboxes in any case. Yeah.
These are happening. And my investor relations guy is the founder and managing director of XCP Venture Capital, which invests in startups across the region, actually.
Right. I wanted to, as we're, I guess, nearing the end of our hour here, I wanted to ask something a little bit more personal, right? You mentioned that earlier on at the start of the conversation that it was really your curiosity higher than the average, as you mentioned. What are you curious about today? What drives your curiosity these days?
Like everybody else now, I'm very curious about how AI data centers work and what they need, what kind of efforts can be made to make Mongolia house the most efficient AI data centers, and if we can use satellites to do that, because we cannot do it through cables, through Russia and China. And that's what is very high on my agenda, and that's why I'm very much focused on learning more about these initiatives. I'm working with the World Economic Forum. Probably we're going to sign as a government, as a state, agreements with the World Economic Forum to make Mongolia a huge sandbox for legislation and regulation of AI data centers and export of AI data center capacity. And also, it will be interesting to see how we can manage the building of the skills and knowledge and passion that is necessary to drive the industry. And I hope to place Mongolia at the forefront of these initiatives. And then you will see a lot of tokenization talk coming out of Mongolia and linkages to Singapore. Suffice to say, my company tokens are traded on IDAX, our crypto exchange. Those tokens will be traded very soon globally. Yeah, so that's a hint.
Looking forward to the headlines and more and more news about those initiatives in the near future. And finally, just to bring things back to Southeast Asia, and you did mention a lot about ties to Singapore and building these kind of relationships with other countries. I'm curious to know also what your view is on Southeast Asia and how the Mongolia Southeast Asia kind of pipeline of innovation and economic support can be built further.
Yeah, we are fortunate in the sense that sometimes we affiliate with Southeast Asia, sometimes we affiliate with ourselves with Greater China, with Northeast Asia, and sometimes, most of the time, we are viewed as Central Asia, along with 5 stans. Yeah, and then we are a member of EBRD, and European Commission has their offices here, etc. We're in a curious situation, and I want to really exploit this curious situation. Southeast Asia, the future is Asian, that's for sure. Yeah, 21st century is Asian. We are driving, under the leadership of China, of course, we are driving the growth of this planet. With China is driving the innovation. China is driving the AI development. I think we need to view it as a fuel for our own growth. And of course, differences in the political systems will play a huge role. And that's why I think countries in Southeast Asia should be able to exploit on the opportunities that the Chinese leadership and drive in terms of AI, EV development, in terms of technology innovation. It gives us opportunities. And China itself is a huge market, huge consumer market. And I think that will help its neighbors, yeah, propel their own growth stories. And that's what we need to look out for. And of course, Russia is in our backyard. The war will stop one day, sanctions will be lifted. And I want to be ready for the day when Russia welcomes back foreign investors. And that will be like me going back to my youth and reliving the
That's
youth
cool.
and not
Yeah.
missing out on the huge opportunities that I missed out because I was too young in 1993, 1992 when I was going to Russia, and I didn't really understand the big dynamics, big opportunities that were opening up to investors and entrepreneurs back then. It will happen again.
On that note, coming full circle, thank you, Gan, for coming on call with us and sharing all of these stories and all of these insights. And really, I think most importantly, the passion, I think, is my biggest takeaway. Really, should talk about your country. I think it really inspires me to think about my own country. I'm from the Philippines. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that with us. And hopefully, our audience tuning in out there, hopefully you've learned a little bit more about Mongolia. I know Mongolia these days is very popular because of the Netflix show.
Physical Asia.
Physical Asia. Yeah, exactly. But now you know a little bit more about the country and then the opportunities it has, and maybe it inspires you guys to start these connections and think really globally in the same way that Gan has. So on that note, thank you so much, Gan, for joining me.
Cheers and good luck, Paolo. Very good to meet you. And thank you for having
Yes.
me.